Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, I'm tackling a new project, Cyclops from X-Men. With his recent addition as a skin in Fortnite, I figured now is the perfect time to bring him to life in 3D. First things first, I needed to find the perfect Cyclops statue file. After some searching, I found one that really captures his iconic look, complete with his visor and that classic blue and yellow suit. Now it's time to get the files ready for printing. I'm using Chitterbox to slice the model, adjusting the settings to ensure everything prints smoothly. I'm also adding custom supports to make sure all the details come out cleanly. With the files sliced and ready, it's time to start the printing process. I'm using my trusty Elegoo resin printers, and as always, I'm keeping an eye on the progress to make sure everything is going smoothly. My first print had a few failures, but it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. With a bit of research, I discovered new settings to ensure my future prints come out perfectly every time. Once the prints are done, it's time for some post-processing. I'm carefully removing the supports and cleaning the prints in isopropyl alcohol to get rid of any excess resin. It's a bit messy, but it's all part of the process. With the larger prints done, I'm moving on to the smaller details using my Elegoo Mars 3. This printer is perfect for capturing those finer elements. I'm repeating the same process, slicing the files, printing, and then carefully removing the prints. The Mars 3 handles these smaller pieces beautifully, giving me crisp, detailed results every time. After cleaning the prints in isopropyl alcohol, it's important to let them dry completely. This ensures that no excess resin or alcohol remains on the surface, which could affect the curing and painting process. I usually let them sit for a bit to make sure they're fully dry before moving on. After adjusting the rough settings in the slicer, the final piece is printed perfectly. Now that everything is washed and prepped, it's time to start curing. I like to arrange them on the curing station in a way that ensures every angle gets evenly exposed to the UV light. This step is crucial for making sure the resin hardens completely, giving the prints the durability they need. Now it's time to check over every piece, carefully removing any leftover supports and sanding down any rough edges. This step is crucial to ensure everything fits perfectly and looks smooth before moving on to the next stage. If you're enjoying this build, let me know in the comments what you'd like to see me create next. I'm always up for a new challenge, and your ideas might just inspire the next big project. Now for the most frustrating and time-consuming part of the entire build, assembling and gluing. I had to meticulously use resin and a UV flashlight to put the base together. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to capture that part on video, but trust me, it was a challenge. There are 8 separate rock pieces, each needing to fit together perfectly. Off camera, I had to do a lot of sanding to get the parts to fit snugly, as not everything aligned right away. It was a tricky process, trying to align each piece while making sure everything stayed in place. Slowly but surely, I managed to get them together, but it took a lot of patience and a steady hand to make it work. I start with a quick test fit, making sure all the pieces align properly before moving on to the next step. Once everything looks good, I begin gluing the parts together and carefully sealing the seam lines with resin. This extra attention to detail ensures a strong bond and a smooth, seamless finish. Here, I'm going back and forth with the resin and a UV flashlight carefully sealing and hiding the seams in the model. Using a small paintbrush, I apply multiple layers of resin to ensure a seamless finish once it's painted. This meticulous process guarantees that the final result looks flawless. Finally, after a lot of hard work, we are ready for everyone's favorite part of the build, painting the statue. With the pieces assembled, it's time to prime them in black paint. Priming is a key step. It helps the paint stick better and reveals any imperfections that might need touch-ups. I'm using a black primer because it creates natural shadows and depth, setting a strong foundation for the colors to come. As I apply the primer, I'm careful to get an even coat across the entire model. The black base will also make the metallic details really stand out later. It's important to cover every part thoroughly to ensure the paint adheres properly in the next steps. Once I'm done, I'll let it dry completely before moving on to the next stage. Now it's time to bring Cyclops to life by airbrushing his iconic blue suit. I start with a quick zenithal highlight to establish some initial lighting, then move on to a dark blue base, carefully applying an even coat to set the foundation. This darker shade will create depth and give the highlights something to contrast against. Once the base layer is down, I gradually work my way up through lighter shades of blue. This layering technique helps build dimension and really makes the figure pop. I focus on the areas that would naturally catch the light, adding highlights to bring out the muscle definition and details of the sculpt. By using the airbrush, I can achieve smooth transitions between the different shades, creating a realistic and dynamic finish. The result is a vibrant, eye-catching blue that really captures the essence of Cyclops. For Cyclops' yellow parts, I start with a pink base layer. This might seem unusual, but it's actually a strategic choice based on color theory. Pink is a complementary color to yellow on the color wheel, which helps create a richer and more vibrant yellow when layered on top. The pink base provides a subtle undertone that enhances the depth and brightness of the yellow paint. This technique helps achieve a more dynamic and eye-catching yellow, as the underlying pink adds warmth and complexity to the final color. It's a great way to ensure the yellow really pops and looks more visually appealing. After laying down the pink base, I apply a bright white zenithal highlight over it. This step helps create contrast and sets the stage for the yellow paint, ensuring it looks vibrant and has a nice gradient effect once applied. Next, I use Citadel's yellow contrast paint for the initial color application. This paint flows into the recesses, creating natural shadows while leaving the raised areas lighter. After the contrast paint has dried, I move on to brightening the yellow using Pro Acryl paints. With the airbrush in hand, I focus on the raised areas and edges, carefully applying thin, controlled layers of paint. This method enhances the highlights while maintaining the depth created by the contrast undercoat. As I work through each section, I make sure to keep the airbrush moving steadily to avoid pooling. This approach ensures a smooth, polished finish. By layering the paint gradually, I can create a subtle gradient that transitions from shadow to highlight, adding dimension and making the yellow really pop against the vibrant blue. With the larger sections complete, I switch gears to focus on the finer details using a small, precise brush. I start with a hot pink base coat, carefully applying it to the smaller areas where the airbrush couldn't reach. This step might seem unusual, but it's all about setting the stage for a more vibrant yellow. When it comes to painting yellow, I find that these extra steps are absolutely necessary to get the best results. Without laying down a proper base and building up the color gradually, yellow can sometimes take on a greenish tint, especially over darker undercoats. Once the pink is laid down, I move on to a bright white, layering it over the pink base. This might look a bit stark now, but it's going to play a crucial role in making the yellow pop later on. The key here is to apply the white evenly and make sure it's smooth, but still leave some pink showing for contrast once the yellow is applied. As I work, I take a step back now and then to check the balance of colors, making sure the transitions are smooth and the highlights aren't overpowering. Now comes the exciting part, bringing Cyclops' suit to life with the yellow contrast paint. I start with the straps on his legs, watching as the bright yellow pops against the deep blue. The contrast paint settles perfectly into the details, making these straps stand out and adding a sharp, vivid element to the suit. And now, the belts across his torso. This is where it all comes together. The yellow flows across the contours of his chest and abdomen, making the whole suit come alive. Each stroke of paint is like adding a spark of energy, turning this into the Cyclops we all know and love. Now for the visor. This part was tricky because I needed just the right shade of gold. I initially started with a bright gold, but it didn't quite match the suit. To fix this, I layered a yellow base underneath the gold. This helped the visor not only match the yellow accents on the suit, but also retain that distinct, metallic gold shine. When I applied the gold over the visor again, the color came out just right, matching the suit perfectly, while still keeping that vibrant, metallic shine. I moved to his hair, laying down a warm brown, making sure to follow the natural direction of each strand with my brush strokes. Once the base layer is set, I go back in to touch up the finer details, ensuring the hair looked realistic and well-defined. For his face, I begin with a base layer of skin tone, making sure to cover around the visor, nose, and mouth evenly. While that dries, I paint his mouth with a blood red, which provides the perfect shade. Once that's set, I add details to his teeth to complete the look. Next, I focus on the red strip for his visor and the X logo. I carefully apply a vibrant red to these areas, ensuring crisp edges and a bold contrast against the rest of the paint. This step really makes the visor and logo stand out, adding a striking final touch to Cyclops' iconic look. With all the parts painted, it's time to start assembling Cyclops. Before I begin gluing, I use a hobby knife to score the connecting surfaces. This creates small grooves that help the glue bond more securely, ensuring a stronger hold when the pieces come together. Now, I carefully glue each piece of Cyclops together, making sure everything aligns perfectly. I take my time to avoid any gaps or misalignments, ensuring a clean and solid assembly. Once Cyclops is fully put together, I'll move on to working on the base, which will bring the whole piece together. I start by airbrushing the Sentinel head with a bold magenta base coat, ensuring a vibrant and even coverage. This striking color sets the stage for the rich shadows and highlights that will bring out the depth and detail of the piece. Next, I blend in red and purple, working them into the shadows and highlights for added depth. A touch of metallic medium gives the finish a subtle sheen, making the Sentinel head look like real metal. I switch focus now to the main section of the Sentinel's face, mixing a custom blend of skin tone, bright gold, and a touch of copper. This combination achieves the exact color I was aiming for, bringing back the look from the TV show I loved growing up. With the main face painted, I move on to the chin, carefully applying the same color mix. This ensures a seamless and consistent appearance throughout the face. Finally, I address any overspray by touching up the areas where the paint may have strayed. This step ensures a clean and sharp finish, perfecting the overall look. To complete the Sentinel head, I start by laying down a dark bluish-black base coat on the helmet, creating a solid foundation for the metallic details. Next, I carefully brush in the metallic paint, highlighting the appropriate areas to bring out the structure of the helmet. I also use the metallics to add weathering and damage effects, giving the helmet a worn, battle-hardened look. I accidentally knocked over my oral wash, spilling it all over the table. But instead of letting it go to waste, I figured, why not put it to good use on the base? Sometimes, a little accident can turn into a creative opportunity. With some final touches added to the Sentinel head, I move on to the last part of the project, the rock structure and platform for the base. I start by dry brushing the rocks, working in bright colors that will later be toned down with black washes. Then, I shift to the platform, dry brushing it with metallics to give it a sturdy, industrial feel. And with that, we can call this another amazing project in the books. Here are the final results. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next creation.